Hello, friends. Today we are going to talk about Edward Said's Orientalism. Now, as I have said earlier, Orientalism, from the point of view of origin, Orientalism is something which is constructed. It is a body of ideas which has been acquired and developed by the West to interpret, to control, to dominate, to construct, and the idea of the Orient. Now, there have been many writers of different disciplines who have resisted Orientalism, and we find such people like A.L. Tibawi. Then we find Anwar Abdul Malik and Said Hussein Alatas and so on. And these people had written critiques of Orientalism. And before Edward Said published his work, these critiques of Orientalism were confined to certain disciplinary boundaries, such as anthropology, such as sociology, history, Islamic studies, linguistics, and so on. But it was Said, who was a Palestinian American scholar, who he borrowed from the earlier studies of some of these writers, and he came up with a treatise which is called Orientalism. Now, here from first, the innovative features of his work is that other than the scholarly and the historical sociological analysis, Edward Said added a new dimension to Orientalism, which now includes literary criticism. So he added a new category, that is, the values which enable the empire and imperial exploitation. So, in other words, imperialism, as found in the writings of people like, in the fiction of writers like, say, Joseph Conrad, Rudyard Kipling, then E.M. Forster, these people, we find the imperialistic tendencies in the writings of these people. And he says that such writers could write only because the European, or rather the European novel, wouldn't have existed in this way without imperialism. That is what he says. And in presenting Orientalism as a meta discourse, Said was able to incorporate all the earlier definitions of Orientalism into his analysis. So, if we go point-wise, the first point which Edward Said says is he defined Orientalism as it is a tradition of studying a region, and it is a classical tradition of studying a particular region, and how to study this region on the basis of its culture, on the basis of its history, on the basis of its language. So anyone who studies or researches about the Orient is an Orientalist. Simply put, anybody who studies the Orient is an Orientalist. So It is in this form that Orientalism has perpetuated through its doctrines and theses. Then, point number two, I quote from Said's own work: Orientalism is a way of coming to terms with the Orient that is based on the Orient's special place in European Western experience. So, it is how one accords a special place. Orientalism occupies a special place in the Western experience. Then point number three is this: there is this uh, ontological distinction between the Orient and the Occident, and this style of thought or this stance taken by the Orientalists, it goes back to antiquity, from the time of the say the Crusades, or even maybe before that, when so much of travel writing had been done. Then point number four, again, it is Orientalism is a Western style for controlling, for dominating, and restructuring the Orient. Okay. Then point number five, Orientalism refers to a library or archive of information, unanimously held. So, and what is in that archive? It is the family of ideas and the set of values which the unifying set of values proven in various ways to be effective. So it is these ideas which have been accumulated and justified also. It explained the behavior of the Orientalists, behavior of the Orientals. Sorry, not Orientalists, Orientals. So it is how the Oriental person is supplied with a certain type of mentality, a certain genealogy, a certain way of behavior, and how the Europeans can see Orientals as a phenomena which possess all these characteristics which define an Oriental. Then point number six, again I quote from Said: Orientalism is a system of representation framed by a whole set of forces that brought the Orient into Western learning, Western consciousness, and later Western empire. So it is a system of representation, how the Orient is being represented in Western learning. And then point number seven, the Western corporate institution responsible for dealing with the Orient. So, what is the way of dealing? The Western institution describes, then teaches, and makes statements, even authorizing views of it and ruling over it by certain means. So, Orientalism incorporates within itself this corporate institution responsible for describing the Orient. So we find here that if we take Edward Said's definitions, then we find that it almost justified colonialism, because Orientalism tries to demonstrate how Europe invented the fiction of the Orient, the fiction of the Orient and the Orientals, and this representation of the Oriental world that is used as a means of subjugating the colonies, which is mainly in the Eastern Hemisphere. And then now one common criticism of Said is that he presented Orientalism as an unchanging, monolithic, and predominantly male oriented discourse. But we find that this is not true, because we find another critic named John Mackenzie, who in his work Orientalism, History, Theory and Arts, he tried to unravel the variety, the heterogeneity, and the changing character of Orientalism. So this is one of how Edward Said's ideas were refuted by other writers. So in short, this is what Said's definition of Orientalism is. Thank you.